It's late. Your laptop is open. Your notes are right there, untouched. You told yourself you'd study today. You even planned what you were going to study, and somehow the day still slipped away. So now you're doing that thing again. Staring at the screen, feeling that low pressure in your chest. You start making deals with yourself. Tomorrow I'll wake up early. Tomorrow I'll be more disciplined. Tomorrow I'll actually stick to it. And for a moment you believe it, but tomorrow comes. You're tired. Life gets in the way, and the cycle quietly repeats. Planning, guilt, burnout. Here's the uncomfortable truth most people never tell you. If consistency actually came from willpower, you would already be consistent. You're not failing because you don't want it badly enough. You're failing because you're relying on something that runs out. So the real question isn't, how do I force myself to study? It's this. Why do some people study almost every day without feeling like they're forcing themselves at all? That's what this video is about. Most of us were taught to think consistency is a personality trait, that some people are just more disciplined, more focused, more mentally strong. And if you're inconsistent, it must mean something is wrong with you. But that belief does more damage than you realize. Because willpower isn't something you have, it's something you borrow. It depends on how much you slept, what you ate, how stressed you are, what kind of day you had, even how many decisions you've already made. By the time it's evening, willpower is usually the first thing that's gone. And this is where most students get stuck. They study on day 1, maybe even day 2. They feel proud. They think, okay, this time it's different. Then day 3 or 4 shows up. You get less sleep. Something stressful happens. Your energy drops just a little. And suddenly studying feels heavy again. So you skip a day. Then you feel guilty for skipping. So you plan harder. You promise yourself you'll lock in tomorrow. But nothing about the system changed. So the cycle repeats. And eventually, you stop trusting yourself. Here's what almost no one tells you. Most people aren't inconsistent because they're lazy. They're inconsistent because they built a system that only works on good days. And the people you think are disciplined, they aren't fighting harder than you, they're fighting less. They don't rely on willpower to show up. They've quietly designed things so showing up is the easiest option. And once you understand that, everything about consistency starts to make sense. Here's the reframe that changes everything. Consistency isn't a personal trait. It's not about who you are. It's about what's around you. Your behavior doesn't follow your goals. It follows your defaults. You don't repeat what's important to you. You repeat what's easiest to do in the moment. Think about your phone for a second. If it's on your desk, face up, notifications on, you'll check it. Not because you're weak, but because it's there. If it's across the room, face down, you forget about it. Same person, different environment, different behavior. Or think about autoplay. You don't plan to watch 3 episodes. It just happens. Not because you lack self-control, but because the system is designed to continue without asking you. Even food works this way. Snacks on your desk get eaten. Snacks in the cupboard get forgotten. None of this is about discipline. It's about friction. The human brain naturally follows the path of least resistance. Always has. Always will. So when studying feels hard, it's usually not because you don't care enough. It's because your environment is quietly pushing you in the opposite direction. So instead of asking, how do I try harder? Ask this. What would make studying the default, even on my worst days? System number 1. The first system is simple, but it's usually misunderstood. Stop planning to study. Instead, plan to start badly. Most people fail before they even begin because they define studying as this big, focused, perfect session. An hour, deep concentration, no distractions. And when your brain hears that, it resists. Not because you're lazy, but because the cost of starting feels too high. So lower it, radically. Instead of I'm going to study, the plan becomes I'm just going to open my notes. That's it. You don't review them. You don't understand them. You just open them. Or you sit at your desk without expecting focus yet. Or you read 1 paragraph. Not a page, not a chapter. 1 paragraph. This works because the brain doesn't fear doing. It fears starting. Momentum. Once you've started, momentum quietly takes over. Not motivation. Your brain shifts from resistance to continuation, and most days you don't stop at 5 minutes. But here's the important part. You're allowed to. You're allowed to stop early, because the goal isn't performance, it's consistency. Most days don't fail because of laziness. They fail before they begin, because the task feels too big to approach. Lower the start cost enough, and showing up becomes almost automatic. This is how you make progress on days when motivation is gone. The second system is about removing decisions, because every time you decide to study, you're giving your brain a chance to say no. Most people don't fail because they choose badly. They fail because they choose too often. I'll study after dinner. Sounds reasonable, but what that really means is, I'll decide later. And later you're tired. Your brain is full. Something more comfortable is nearby. So the decision quietly disappears. Instead, make studying a default. Same time, same place. Not because it's optimal, but because it's predictable. When studying happens at the same time in the same environment, it stops feeling like a task. It starts feeling like background behavior. The way you brush your teeth, the way you check your phone in the morning. There's no internal debate, no motivation check. You don't ask, do I feel like doing this today? You just sit down. And some days it's messy. Some days it's unfocused. Some days it's short. That's fine. Because consistency doesn't come from intensity. It comes from removing the need to decide. Consistency dies in decision-making. The fewer choices your system asks of you, the longer it survives. The third system is less visible, but it's the one that makes everything stick. Stop tying studying to how you feel, because moods change, energy drops. Some days just feel heavier than others. If your system depends on feeling ready, it will always break on bad days. So instead of asking, do I feel like studying right now? Ask a different question. What does someone like me do at 8 p.m.? Not on perfect days. On normal ones. Identity works quietly in the background. When you see yourself as the kind of person who studies a little even on bad days, showing up stops being a test. It becomes a vote, a small one, but consistent. You're not trying to prove anything. You're just reinforcing who you are. And notice the shift here. The goal isn't to study well, it's to show up. Some days you'll be focused. Some days you won't. But you still sit down. Because your identity isn't built on performance. It's built on consistency. This is where most systems fail, because they ignore how you see yourself. And when your system fights your identity, identity always wins. If this all sounds familiar, there's a good chance you've tried something like it before. And maybe it didn't last. Not because you failed, but because the system asked too much of you, too quickly. One common mistake is over-planning. New schedules, detailed timetables, big expectations. Everything looks good on paper. But real life doesn't follow plans that tightly. Another mistake is waiting for motivation. Telling yourself, I'll start when I feel ready. But feeling ready is unpredictable. And building consistency on something unstable never works. And maybe the biggest one, trying to fix everything at once. New habits, new routines, new goals, all at the same time. That kind of change is heavy. And eventually, something gives. Usually you. So if your past attempts didn't stick, it doesn't mean you lack discipline. It means your system wasn't built for real days. The tired ones, the stressful ones, the imperfect ones, you weren't inconsistent. Your system just asked too much of you. And that's not a personal failure. It's a design problem. So here's how to try this tonight. Nothing complicated, no full reset, just a small shift. First, choose one subject. Not everything you're behind on, just one. Second, choose one place. The same desk, the same chair, no optimization. Then set a 10-minute timer. Not to finish anything, not to make progress, just to sit there with the material. Open the notes, read a little, write something messy. And when the timer ends, stop. On purpose. This part matters. Stopping early teaches your brain that studying isn't a threat. It doesn't drain you. It doesn't punish you. It becomes something you can return to, because consistency isn't built by pushing harder. It's built by making the habit survivable. 10 minutes you can repeat. An hour you might avoid. So don't chase intensity. Chase repeatability. That's how this actually lasts. You don't need more discipline. You don't need to become a different person. You just need fewer obstacles between you and starting. When studying works with your mind instead of against it, consistency stops feeling like a fight. It becomes something you can return to, even on hard days. So try this tonight, just once. No pressure to be perfect. And if this helped, stay around. This channel is about building systems that respect how your mind actually works.